Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of The Lovable Madman. During the production of its 23rd season, The Simpsons was going through something of a contract dispute with the Fox network, causing showrunner Al Jean to commission a potential series finale be written. Unable to come to an agreement, it came that on December 11th, 2011, The Simpsons would air its final episode, Holidays of Future Past. I'm just kidding, everything worked out fine, and The Simpsons has been going for the last 10 years. But, what if, upon renewal, Holidays of Future Past had served a different purpose instead of just becoming another Christmas special? What if it instead had served as a kind of second pilot for the series? When Holidays of Future Past aired, it was praised as one of the best Simpsons episodes in years. It's an emotional and heartfelt look at Bart, Lisa, and the rest of the characters 30 years in the future. The episode was meant to put a bow on the emotional journeys of the characters and bring the series full circle by ending it as it began, with Christmas. But I don't want to talk about this episode as a series finale or whether or not The Simpsons should have ended there. Instead, I want to talk about the potential that this episode had at reinvigorating The Simpsons and breathing new life into the series. The best part about the time skip is we would see the same characters at a very different point in their lives. Homer and Marge would be retired and grandparents, and I think it would be rewarding as a viewer to see them finally happy after all the turmoil they went through. Bart, Lisa, and Maggie all have a very different relationship with their spouses and with their kids than Homer and Marge did. And instead of revisiting Homer and Marge's relationship over and over and over and over again, there would be three very different sets of relationships to just jump in with and fully explore. The troubled relationships of Bart and Lisa could be used as a mirror to Homer and Marge's relationship at roughly the same age and point in their lives. While Homer was always successful in winning Marge back, Bart doesn't seem to have that same level of luck with his ex-wife Jinda. Now, Bart also has two sons, Skippy and Jif. Skippy is older and seems to be around 6, while Jif is about 4 or 5. Homer is not a good father at all, but he always made an effort to try and connect with his kids and was always there for his family. In Holidays of Future Past and its sort of pseudo-sequel episode, Days of Future Future, Bart doesn't even have that kind of a relationship with his kids. His story could revolve around getting to know his sons and repairing his relationship with them, and by extension, his relationship with Jinda, who he is still in love with. She could see a softer side to him as he repairs his relationship with his boys. As kind of just a quick side note, Bart's sons aren't actually named in these episodes. I got their names from the Simpsons wiki, and they've also been referred to as Kirk and Picard, but I like them being named after peanut butter. I think it fits better within the world of the Simpsons. Counter that to Lisa's marriage with Milhouse, which she is not happy in and is constantly talking with Nelson on the phone. Fully going in and exploring a crumbling relationship within the world of The Simpsons could be really interesting, and it could be one that ultimately fails. Going the route of having Lisa and Milhouse split up, we would get to experience the full effect that divorce has on the kid through their daughter Zia, and not just as a proxy through the kid's friend. When Milhouse's parents got divorced, we experienced that entire plot and story through the eyes of Bart and not Milhouse. The mother-daughter relationship could still be explored through Lisa and Zia, and even Zia's relationship with Milhouse, who could actually be a really good dad. Zia would also provided new avenues of storytelling because she's a teenager, which is something the Simpsons don't really have access to with their main cast. Maggie, as an adult, has become a famous rock star and has just given birth to her first child, Maggie Jr. Now, we don't know who the father of Maggie Jr. is, and it really doesn't matter. That wouldn't be the focus of Maggie's story. Maggie's story would focus on balancing her public persona with her private life and being a new single mother. She could also be used as a way to explore how the world has changed kind of beyond Springfield for whenever she goes on tour. Now, Maggie in the future episodes is always sidelined or even actively just written out of them, so we never get to see her relationships with her family. And it's all done in the service of keeping the gag of Maggie doesn't talk going. Having, one of your main characters be mute is A, not super plausible, but B, more importantly, a huge disservice to the character. But I do have a solution. So Lisa didn't get the scratchy kind of voice of Marge or the other Bouvier women, but Maggie did. So when she talks, she has her scratchy voice, but because she's a famous singer, whenever she would sing or perform, her singing voice would be performed by a special guest musician. Expanding beyond the core Simpson family, we could also see how Marge's sisters changed. Patty could be happily married to a woman after having been revealed as a lesbian in season 16. And Selma could have a string of 30 years worth of failed marriages. Wayne could have a larger role in the series, and we could see her as an adult, and through flashbacks, her growing up with Maggie and how they kind of grew in their relationship as kids and even into adulthood. Moving into the wider world of Springfield, all of the sort of adult characters that we know and are familiar with would be retired or passed on by now, and their roles could be filled by the younger generation of Springfield, such as Bart and Lisa's classmates. In Holidays of Future Past, Ralph had a bunch of clones that constantly killed themselves. One of those clones was the chief of police, and this would sort of be the only Ralph, or like the main Ralph, who became chief of police after one day he just decided to put on his dad's uniform, and everyone just sort of went with it. And Martin, for example, could take over from Professor Frank as like Springfield's resident mad scientist, is just a few examples of how things could change with the time skip. Now, in order for this to work kind of long term, there would need to be a couple of minor changes to the world of Holidays of Future Past. Nothing major that would affect the story or the plot, because it is a really good and really heartfelt episode, but more of a grounding of the technology presented, making it more realistic and less like Futurama. Teleporters, for example, could still exist, but they would just be exclusive to the super rich and super wealthy, thus eliminating the need for first class on airplanes, still giving us the Mad Max style airports we see in the episode. This would take this technology away from, say, Bart, whose sons teleport in at the beginning of the episode. Instead, their mom would have just dropped them off and driven away before Bart could say anything. TVs would still be TVs, although they could have like minor 3D projections instead of being the full-on holograms that we see. And space travel could be toned down, as in the episode Man Has Walked on the Sun, where, for example, we could see the early stages of like a moon colony or something. Now, the point of this discussion is not to make some minor changes to one episode, but to see how this new setting really could have helped some other episodes, such as Lisa Goes Gaga. Now, this episode has found its way onto many worst Simpsons episode lists, and with good reason. Now, the plot of the episode centers around Lady Gaga helping Lisa come to return with herself and being more confident in who she is. That on its own isn't a bad plot. However, it's misplaced by centering it on Lisa. Lisa is one of the most independent and confident characters in The Simpsons. And we've seen that when Bleeding Gums Murphy and Mr. Bergstrom help her realize that, and when she becomes a Buddhist and a vegetarian, and countless other times. Lisa had spent 20 years showing us how independent and confident she is with herself, and this episode throws it all out the window to give a popular singer an insane amount of screen time. The episode also perfectly personifies one of the issues with some of the later Simpsons episodes, which was the focus on the celebrity guest and not the characters or humor. Setting this episode in the future gives us two new Simpsons that we could refocus this story on. Both Maggie and Zia are perfect candidates for this kind of story. Both would have grown up being compared to Lisa at every turn. The episode could start as a flashback with Maggie being in second or third grade and getting tired of being compared to Lisa all the time. Lady Gaga could help her come to terms with her exploring her own interests and just kind of not focusing so much on being compared to her sister. Something that an adult Maggie in the future would later pay forward to Zia. Another episode that I think really could have benefited from the time skip would have been Bart's friend. In this episode, Homer is hypnotized into thinking that he's 10 years old again and befriends Bart. But what if a 40-year-old Bart was hypnotized into thinking he was 10 years old instead? Now, Bart, as a child, was far more outgoing and troublesome and rambunctious than either of his quiet and introverted boys. How would Jif and Skippy react to a 10-year-old Bart? Would they find his pranks and antics funny, or would they be scared by how outgoing and loud he was as a child? Or would they even see the difference between 10-year-old Bart and 40-year-old Bart? How would this affect the relationship that he's trying to rebuild with Jinda? I can't imagine that would go well no matter how anyone else responded. This also would have been a good way to connect kind of the older, more classic Simpsons episodes with the new episodes taking place in this future timeline. This concept could have served as more than just a way to rewrite a few episodes. And in addition to new adventures set exclusively in the future, the writers would have had a blank slate of 30 years to play with. And A Holidays of Future Past starts with 30 years worth of Christmas cards that could have served as the basis for potential plots. How in back-to-back years did Lisa go from being a goth to dressing up like Sailor Moon? Why is Bart dressed as a greaser for 1 year? And what kind of zany vacations do Marge and Homer go on now that they're retired? More than 14 million people would tune into The Simpsons every week for season 12. By season 23, that number had dropped to around 7 million. And by season 30, just under 3 million people continued to tune in every week. I grew up with The Simpsons. My family would watch it every Sunday. And we'd watch the reruns throughout the week. I was an infant when they started airing their own episodes, and I've grown up with this show. And I don't remember exactly when I stopped watching it. I think it was sometime around season 19 or 20. I would periodically catch new episodes here and there, but most of my exposure to the later seasons has been through Disney Plus. If Holidays of Future Past had really been the series finale, I would have made an effort to watch it. If it had been billed as a new beginning for The Simpsons, I might have had a reason to reinvest. I don't know if this would have been the jolt that this series needed to get its viewership back up. I like to think so. lot of really interesting possibilities, or it could have completely tanked the show and led to its cancellation because people wouldn't have liked it because it was new or different, or maybe it just would have been executed really poorly. Anyway, I'd love to know what you thought of this idea, whether it could have worked then, whether it could work now, whether The Simpsons does need some sort of massive change to try and get viewership back up, or if that kind of effort is even worth it still. If you've continued to watch The Simpsons, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to know what you think of the later seasons. And if you stopped, I'd love to know that too. I'd love to know when you watched consistently. You can leave those answers below, or really anything related to The Simpsons. I'd love to hear about it. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and let me know. And if you want to see more from me, be sure to subscribe. Today's trivia: Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire was not intended to be the original pilot. Instead, it was going to be Some Night Out, but that episode had a printing issue which led to 70% of the episode needing to be redone. Thank you all for watching. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.